Good evening, and welcome to the Mosquito Fire Information Community Meeting for Friday, September 16th. My name is Nathan Judy, Information Officer for California Interagency Incident Command Team 5. I will be your facilitator for this evening, along with our ASL interpreter, Jackie. This evening, you will hear from members of our Unified Incident Command Team. Questions submitted earlier on email will be addressed after the formal presentation, and ones submitted online will be answered during the meeting, and ones that weren't answered will be answered afterwards in the chat. The fire is currently at 71,292 acres, 20% contained. We have a total of 3,453 personnel assigned to this fire. Starting us off this evening is Operations Section Chief Dave Saldivini.
Hello, I'm Dave Soldivini, and operational update for today. A lot of good success to report. Starting down here in the middle fork of the American River, we had the firing operation that we concluded yesterday, and there's still a little pocket in there of fuels that's been burning up, putting up some smoke, but that's what it's supposed to be doing. Had crews in there working the edge of the fire, mopping up and securing while that was going on, keeping a good eye on it, making sure we didn't have any spot fires, and we didn't. And then coming up out of there towards Todd Valley and going out Forest Hill, out towards Michigan Bluff and the Deadwood Road. Real quiet day. Crews getting in there, continuing to mop up about 500 feet in, really going after those last difficult smokes, and good success all the way through here out to the Deadwood Road, and then coming down Deadwood Ridge on the Deadwood Road. They mopped up that to get this all ready to keep this in check ahead of some anticipated winds in case the fire decides to push out. Only real heat in the fire today was up here in the North Fork and the Middle Fork in this really, really steep river canyon up here. And around that, we had crews working different road systems and ridges to try and get line in here that we can build off of going forward. Still looking for that magic path across that North Fork of the Middle Fork. Just steep, nasty terrain. Lots of people in there trying to find a way to make that work. While they're doing that, got other folks a little further out making sure we got a good, solid, and continuous perimeter line around there should this fire begin to move. Coming down from the North Fork of the Middle Fork into the Middle Fork, still had some fire behavior in here, but not as dramatic. Crews were working to try and check the fire up and get in line west of Greek Store area and really get this checked up good. And a lot of success in here and starting to find ways across the Middle Fork and make that work. Having some issues coming down from the north, but on the south side from the river up, a little bit further out, kind of parallel to the French Meadows Road. They were able to find a way they think that's going to work to bring that up to French Meadows Road, and coming up with a plan there to tie that into 11 Pines and then bring that down to where the fire is right now in the Ramsey Crossing area. A lot of work being done where the fire is hitting the 11 Pines Road here to keep that in check. And then when you get away from that, and 11 Pines does a big loop in this area. So when you get on that southern loop, making sure that line is built to come down towards the Rubicon River over Devil's Peak, and then tie that down into Wentworth Springs Road. Once you turn the corner there, and you come up here along Wentworth Springs Road, it peels off at Sweet Pea around Stumpy Meadows. And the Fire's Edge right here, they've been mopping that up and really doing a good job all the way across the southern edge. All the communities in there, Quintet, Volcanoville, and then out to where Buckeye Peak is where it drops off back into the Middle Fork. And that's been holding for several days in there, but still a lot of people in there doing that hard work to put the fire out. Thank you. End of report.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. Next up, we're going to bring our fire behavior analyst, Jonathan Pangburn.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm going to start off with a bit of a weather update. We've had this very persistent flow out of the southwest, wind pushing toward the northeast, not particularly strong, but continuing to push a little bit each day. That's going to last into the first part of tomorrow, until around maybe 11 o'clock or so, and the winds are going to start to increase. They're still out of the southwest, moving to the northeast, but it's going to start to get stronger with some gusty winds, and it's really going to start to pick up around 3 o'clock tomorrow. That's in advance of the storm system that is coming into the area around Saturday night. It's really going to start impacting our area around Sunday with a little bit of shower activity. It's going to pick up even more on Sunday night into Monday, and the National Weather Service is forecasting that Monday is going to be the rainiest period of this storm event. We'll still have some shower activity lasting into Tuesday and possibly even as late as Wednesday morning. However, the greatest amount of activity again will be on Monday. There is also a chance for some thunderstorms along with this storm activity. Shifting gears to fire behavior, what does that mean for our incident and what is it going to do? Well, today the smoke settled into the area, and as you just heard from our operations section chief, it didn't have as much growth along the eastern flank except for an area around the North Fork or the Middle Fork of the American River. There was a little bit of activity, certainly in the Ramsey Crossing type area. Again, where we get on ridge lines where the wind is more prominent, it was able to push a little bit further. However, there is still some activity all along this entire eastern front where we have fuels that remain critically dry. Again, I'm going to remind you, we had a record-breaking heat wave, and we had record dry fuels in the area available to burn, and they remain so. They're going to remain very, very dry, receptive fuel bed to continue this fire, even through the rain event. However, the rain, of course, will slow it down and give firefighters a chance to get in and continue to do some control line operations along this eastern flank, especially around the slightly flatter areas outside of the main drainages. I want to bring up any concerns about the communities, Quintet, Volcanoville, Todd Valley, Forest Hill, Georgetown, and beyond. I do not see any threat to those areas. I do not see any fire progression going there. One, the wind is certainly not in alignment, and two, the firefighting and control efforts have been fantastic out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. Next up from Placer County Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant Josh Barnhart.
Thank you. Good evening. We'll start with the map again. As you can see, there's been no changes to evacuation zones, orders, or warnings. That's a good thing. There's not been any expansions. We continue patrols 24 hours a day to make sure that those zones are secure. We'll pull up the damage inspections report, which we posted today on our social media and our website if you go to placersheriff.org. We wanted to make sure that the damaged structures were reported to our citizens, and that's why we posted the phone numbers, if you'll remember. We went ahead, once the report was completed, we went ahead and posted it for you. And just as you can see from the key, that the red are destroyed structures, orange, major damage, yellow, minor damage, green, affected, gray, inaccessible, and black, no damage. So I just wanted to say that if we pull back the map again, if we could, as you heard from the weather report, we're going to experience some winds over the weekend, and we just want to make sure that we're prepared for that. As you saw on Tuesday, the winds picked up, started a spot fire, which started at the river and up toward Todd Valley, and we want to make sure that we keep those evacuation orders in place in case of a similar experience over the weekend. We are working very hard to repopulate on the plan to do so, and we just want to know that you to know that we empathize with you. We also have personnel that live in the area that have been evacuated and family members as well. So it is our highest desire to repopulate those areas as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Appreciate that. Next up from El Dorado County Sheriff's, Sergeant Anthony Principe.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm going to go to the evacuation map as well. Anthony Principe, Public Information Officer for the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office. So today we were able to open up or put into evacuation warning zones the area of most of Georgetown. So that's going to be the area over here. It's going to be west of Wentworth Springs Road at Catabria Lane, north of Greenwood Road, and Gray Bar Mine Road, east of Highway 193 and Slager Mine Road, and south of Bottle Hill Road at Snowcap Road. So that area right now is an evacuation warning area, no longer evacuation order. There are still areas around it in evacuation order. If you want to see if your home falls under that evacuation warning area, you can go to our website at edcgov.us and check that specifically. Regarding traffic control points, we have moved those. We have 3 of them now. One at Spanish Dry Diggins at the North Reservoir Road, one at Slager Mine Road, north of L'Oreal Drive, and another on Wentworth Springs Road at Catabria Lane. I want to reiterate that while this has gone into an evacuation warning stage in this area, there is still a threat of fire in this area. When entering this spot, we want to make sure that you guys understand that you're going into a place where people are still working. Firefighter crews, law enforcement crews are still working in this area. We want you to be aware of your surroundings and also prepared to evacuate if that need arises. If you are somebody that has a difficult or slow time evacuating, we ask that you don't return to this area just yet. For staffing levels, law enforcement staffing, we had 54 total officers today working the fire. That's 17 El Dorado County Sheriff's officers and 37 mutual aid. Currently, for evacuation order, we have 1,898 people and 696 structures under evacuation order. We have 13,933 people and 5,442 structures under evacuation warning. We have 106 people that are being sheltered at the county's 2 shelters, and there remains to be capacity for further. Animal Services is sheltering 309 large and small animals and has capacity for more. The county is also standing up a local assistance center next Wednesday through Saturday at the Government Center in Placerville to provide a one-stop shop to help individuals, families, and businesses with services and resources that can help them through this. We'll provide more details on that at the county website and our social media. And lastly, all of this can be found on our social media and on the county website. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant. Appreciate that. Next up, we're going to bring on one of our unified incident commanders from CAL FIRE, Jim Hudson.
All right, good evening, everybody, and thanks for being with us again. I'm happy to provide you an update, and I appreciate all of your ability to tune in with us every night and get the update, because I know this is very important to you, and many of you are impacted by this fire. As of yesterday, this is the largest fire in the state this year, and it's provided some complex situations, but we have been able to make some gains, which is indicative by the map that you saw that we're starting to get some black lines sitting at 20% contained. You can see where our efforts are put in around the communities, and our priorities have continued to be life and property. We've been monitoring the chats very closely, and we understand that the biggest thing for a lot of you is to get you back home, and I assure you that is our number one priority and our goal. Right here in this incident base today and out on the fire line, we have law enforcement and firefighters that are evacuated currently too, and we want to get them home. They want to be in their homes, but we're not there completely yet in the incident. And you just heard from the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office, and we did see an order reduced to a warning. But it's important that we understand that each section of this fire provides its own complexities and different situations. When we go to repopulate, it's not as simple as sending everybody back home at once. I've been looking at the chats closely, and specifically to Forest Hill and Todd Valley. Please understand, just 2 days ago, there was a very significant firefight in Forest Hill that many of us in this room witnessed with their own eyes. It was excellent work by the firefighters, but so you know that fire burned right into town, right at the edge of Forest Hill Road, right at Wharton's Market there. We've reported that there was no loss of residents or homes in that area, but it was a significant fight 2 days ago. And to put it into perspective, on this 72,000 acres, just 2 days ago, we had a 1,500-acre fire right on the edge of town. So that is the conditions we're dealing with. We are working tirelessly to mop it up and make the community safe. It's a coordinated effort for infrastructure with utility companies. There are still hazards out there. And specifically to Todd Valley, we're getting close, I assure you. There is still fire below Todd Valley in the American River drainage. Just a few days ago, same day, that fire spotted across the river. So we are working tirelessly. Crews have been out there cutting line in very steep terrain, tying it into the El Dorado County side of the river, and doing some low-intensity firing operations. We're getting there, but we're not there tonight, and that's just the honest truth, and we'll continue to make that our maximum effort. We'll keep you updated, and I assure you will be home as soon as humanly possible. And that is our goal, and we'll continue to fight this fire in its entirety, but we know where our priorities are and what your priorities are. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander. That concludes our formal presentation this evening. Next, we'll go into answering some of the questions that you emailed earlier today. And after that, we'll look and see if we have any in the chat. First, we want to bring up from Placer County Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant John Barnhart.
All right.
Yep, click it on there.
There we go. Is there any way we can get an estimate on how much longer Todd Valley residents will be displaced from their homes? I understand there's a lot to do before we can get back in, but some kind of estimate would be helpful to figure out what we need to do for more permanent housing in the meantime. I wish I could give you an estimate, and it really depends on the fire conditions and the weather conditions coming up. And again, we're not the only stakeholders in that decision. It's a unified command decision, and we have to make sure that the fire's not going to continue to spread in that area before we repopulate. And as stated before, the repopulation process is just that. We'll be doing it in sections, and believe me, it is our top priority to get you guys back as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Next, we've got some questions for the El Dorado County Sheriff. We'll bring back up Sergeant Anthony Principe.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. One is one that keeps kind of popping up, and that I feel like we've addressed here, but I want to say it as well. The repopulation is not based on one global thing. It's a lot of factors that are going into, and we're in meetings all day, multiple times a day, talking about it. So areas it'll be fluid and it'll go in waves, and we're trying to get everybody home as quickly but as safely as we can. And the one question I will go over, without going through all the details, this person is wondering if they live in an area that is considered an evacuation warning zone, but there's a barricade because there's a barricade at an order spot right there. Can they get home? Yes, there are some roads that are right past barricades that go into yellow zones. If you show your ID, you should be able to get through to get home if you live within that evacuation warning zone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sergeant. Next, we're going to bring back our Operations Section Chief, Dave Saldivini. You have another one here.
I got another one.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Good evening, Dave Soldivini, Operations Section Chief, and I got a handful of questions here. I'll try and get through them and give them all due time and a good answer. So the first question has to do with containment. And the question is the estimated fire and date for containment the same? It is. It's still October 15th. And the next question is, why is that containment percentage at 20% not changing? And the answer to that is the firefighters on the ground working that feel that it needs a little more work and a little more time to really get that work done. For those of you who were watching the other night, I was talking about how that black line up here, for those folks on the ground that are working really hard, that's their stamp of approval, and that's their reputation on that line. So they're not just going to be all like, hey, whatever, black line, good. That's not who we are as professionals. It needs to be thoroughly worked. It needs to be along the road and then in deep to remove all those threats to it crossing the line. And it needs to be tested over time with wind and in different weather situations to really get a good idea where it's at before we're going to do that. And that's just because we don't want to say something looks good and then have it jump our line. That just is not where we're at professionally. So moving on, the next question here is, why do firefighters not have masks on with all the smoke? And there's probably 100 people in this room. There's probably 100 different answers from the different firefighters. For the most part, the smoke we're in isn't so thick that it's immediately hazardous to our lives. And so we're comfortable with it. We've accepted it as part of our job. When it gets thicker and thicker, what we do is we start trying to rotate our firefighters through that so that they get some good air if we're going to put them back in some bad air. And I was just on a fire up in the Trinity County, Humboldt County area where the smoke got so bad you couldn't even see to the front hood of your truck. We just pulled the firefighters out of that. It wasn't safe. We weren't going to be able to get any work done. So we just pulled them out. We waited for better air and we put them back in there. So that's the reason. And a lot of us do have on our engines what's called self-contained breathing apparatus, the big backpack with the tank, and that goes over. And that's for really specific conditions where the atmosphere is so toxic it could be immediately threatening to your life or well-being. And we do have those available should that situation arrive, and we need that tool. All right, moving on. Hoping not to miss any of these questions because they just keep coming. How is Todd Valley holding and Forest Hill? Todd Valley is holding well. Forest Hill is holding well. I know my counterpart, Jonathan, when he got off, realized he may have not explained something as thoroughly as he wanted. And I appreciate this question because he was hoping that I would explain this a bit more. The threat to Todd Valley. There's no immediate threat to Todd Valley right now. That fire is behaving the way we expect it to. The current and expected fire weather should keep that line in containment, but there's always that chance that something can go wrong and we can get another spot fire across the line. And we're not at that point where we're putting black line down there. We're not at that point with law enforcement and with everything else to really say that there cannot be a threat in the future, especially with the winds coming tomorrow and into Sunday ahead of that rain event. So we want to be real careful in there. So no immediate threat right now. We're not concerned about houses burning up, but we want to make sure that a threat doesn't evolve over the next 48 hours, let's say. That goes on to any chance of the fire reaching Placerville. I've been getting a lot of these questions, and so I've started conferring with fire behavior expert. We have long team strategic planning experts here, and really doing some modeling and taking a look at it. The fire's not going to reach Placerville. Is what it comes down to under the current conditions with the weather we've got, the fire behavior we're observing. The fire's not going to get to Placerville. Now, can that change? And in a week, we're in a different situation? Yes, but that is very, very, very unlikely that we're going to see a change that would create that situation. And we'd be discussing that, and we would make the public aware of that should that change. And that comes into how close to Gurley Creek Tract. And Gurley Creek Tract is right in here between Union Valley Reservoir and Hellhole. So right here, we're looking at what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 air miles. That is a big distance on a fire, especially, I keep using the terms, with the current conditions we have. 8 miles is a long, long ways away for this fire to be. And then I think I'm down to 3 questions here now. Why isn't there black line on Forest Hill Road by Church Street? Does this mean it is not contained and still at risk? Well, yes, that does mean that the fire is not at a point where we're calling it contained. But the fire perimeter has been secured here in that Church Street area and around to the Church Street subdivision, and it hasn't moved in days. So it's in good shape. It's moving towards containment. But like I said, the firefighters there just aren't ready to give that final stamp of approval. And that's the reason. And I am down to 2 more questions. I'll do the easy one first. Is it possible to do a flyover of Todd Valley with a drone or helicopter? It'd give me better peace of mind to actually see the area. And as much as I understand that, no, you cannot be flying your drone or helicopter over the fire area. There's one of the first things we do with the fire when we start using aircraft is institute what's called a TFR, temporary flight restriction, and no aircraft are allowed in that area. And the driving reason for that is safety. We're going to have fixed-wing aircraft, the retardant dumpers that you see on the TV coming in with the red stuff coming out of the belly, and we're going to have helicopters dipping in rivers and then dropping on the fire in this endless cycle. And then we have an airplane or a helicopter above all of this, making sure it's coordinated and we don't have any mid-air collisions. And at this point, we're throwing into the mix drones, both the rotor wing and fixed-wing drones that are working in this airspace. So it's tightly controlled. And if we allowed the public to come in with a helicopter or a drone, it creates an unsafe situation. And if somebody goes ahead and does that despite the restriction, we have to put all that aircraft on the ground. We lose all the advantage we have from having that aircraft there, and we lose the safety measures we get by having those aircraft up there telling us what they can see that we can't see on the ground. So it's critically important that you don't intrude on that airspace. It's illegal, and it will really upset the fire operation. So it's just not appropriate. And as far as your peace of mind, I understand that, and I wish I could tell you something more than right now. Todd Valley is looking good for right now. And then that brings me to the most complex question of the bunch. Can you please talk more about the plan for the western head of the Mosquito fire? How much more backfiring is needed, and where exactly do you plan to take the backfiring to? So the plan for the western head of the Mosquito fire, so I'm going to put this down. And talking about that, so over here, we're on the western side, so we're talking about the Middle Fork Canyon to the south of Todd Valley and Forest Hill, and north of Volcanoville, in that general area. The plan has been to get fire line around this area, and we've done that. And then when that fire line is, to do firing operations along it. And so that's all been done. So the answer to your question, how much firing is left to be done, is none. Right now, we've got that all done. What's happening is, with some smoke down in here coming up, is just those fuels burning up. And that was the plan to begin with. Now, one of the things we did, and why we had to do that firing and to make this plan really good, is a good friend of mine who was a hotshot superintendent for about 12 years and a hotshot for a lot longer than that says, you don't have a good plan until you have crews on both sides of the river waving at each other with line down to them burnt out and being mopped up. And so what we did with this last firing operation was pick a ridge and get all the way down so that those crews are looking right across each other at the river and the fires like that. And what it does is it creates less of an offset where we have a chance for spot fires. So that's the reason that we're doing that, and that's what the plan was behind what we did. That plan has been instituted. No more firing is going to go on under the current situation. Something dramatic would have to happen, and it's in place, and now it's that mop up and really get in there and do the back-breaking hard work. And so that's the 8 questions I got tonight. No more?
We'll bring you some more.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Next, we had a question for the Tahoe National Forest. We're going to bring up Matt Jedra.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Matt Jedra, Agency Administrator for the Tahoe National Forest and Acting Forest Supervisor. So question came in, is there a concern for the plaster grove of big trees? So currently the plaster grove of big trees out in this area here, about 3 to 4 miles from the edge of the fire. This is the northernmost grove of giant sequoias we have in California. We've done a tremendous amount of work over the past couple days to get this area prepped. We're looking at doing some prescribed fire through this and doing some raking and some thinning around there. So if fire were to come through there at some point, the trees would be protected at some point and also provide a good defense. Like I said, a lot of resources in there over the past couple days, and they're going to be in there until we end up getting this fire front, should it come to that point, to have those trees protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. We've also got some questions again for Placer County Sheriff, so we'll bring back up Lieutenant Josh Barnhart.
Okay, we have a couple about Hillcrest Mobile Home Park, and the first one was, is it okay? And yes, it is. And the second question about that is whether or not you can repopulate yet, and it is still an evacuation order zone. Like I said before, it is our goal to get you back as quickly as possible. Just know that it is okay. Have there been any other arrests in the evacuation zone? And no, there have not. Our deputies continue to patrol it 24 hours a day, and during the day especially, they will drive around, make assists if needed, and animal control is in there as well, assisting citizens with their animals. Is Wharton's Market still there? Yes, it is. Wharton's Market is fine. And then the final question, what specific steps are taken to get us back in? And that is a very large question, but I can tell you that, like I said before, we will be doing the repopulation process in steps, and we'll start in areas that are farthest away from the fire. And similar to Dorado County, what they're doing, we will be doing the same thing. So we will be putting those messages out, so just be aware in the coming days to be aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Appreciate you coming back up. And, of course, we've got some more questions for our Operations Section Chief, so we'll bring back up Dave.
All right, I got 3 more questions here. And first one is, what is the possibility of the fire moving into Pollock Pines and Camino? And it's essentially the same answer as the Placerville. Under the current conditions that we are experiencing, the quality of the work that's been done on this fire has essentially eliminated that risk. And when I say that, I still want to caution that there are things that can change over the next weeks and months until we get into winter that could change that situation. And it's part of my job to be aware of that and be a really kind of a negative person about it and try and think of all those possibilities and what can we do to keep that from happening and what does that look like if things are going to change so that we know about that ahead of time and are able to make plans to keep that from happening. So that's my answer for you there. And then the next one, that's actually 3, kind of all play off of each other. How does the incoming weather impact strategy over the next couple days? And I want to fold that in with what about the eastern flank? It's wide open. What's going on there? And so first of all, let's talk about where we're at. The eastern flank, yeah, it looks wide open on this map from where you're at. If you could get up close where I am, you'd see a bunch of purple lines with R's and black lines with H's and X lines. And all of those little lines are showing where we've run dozers or hand crews or we've improved roads to create fire line. And there is a network of stuff going on all through here. Redundant systems. The fire moves a little bit here and gets over one of our lines, we've got another line. It keeps moving, we've got another line, we've got another line. And then we've got one that's tied around the whole thing, and then we've got little connectors in between. So that's what we're doing. And fire's up here is a little bit hotter and it's in steeper country. So what we're doing right now is taking advantage of the weather. Even though that rain's not here yet, the fire laid down today. And so what'd we do? That work we were doing out here, because the fire was a little more dangerous, folks are right in there, and they're in there right now tonight working to get those lines in and get that to a point where when we got fire to that line, going to start mopping that up, start mopping that in, and the goal, we want that black line there. But like I said, we want quality black line. We're not going to settle for anything less. So that's what's going on. Now, I talked about being a negative person. I'm always looking for those things that can go wrong. In the next, say, 48 hours, next 2 days, the winds are going to pick up. And wind in general is a bad thing for a fire. It likes to push it, gives it more oxygen, moves it across the landscape. So we need to be aware that wind coming in before the rain on let's say, Sunday night, kind of looking at all the different forecasts going on, by Sunday night at midnight, we should expect a little bit of moisture. At the same time, before that rain gets here, the humidity is going to get up, the air mass is going to get wetter. So while it may be windier, it's also going to be damper, and that's going to we'll have to see where that balances out. So let's say all of that goes wrong. The weather forecast is way off. It passes us to the north, and all we get is that wind. We don't even get the dampness. So what we've done, Jonathan, who is up here speaking, a friend of mine, Dan, who's doing some long-term and strategic planning with this, have been running computer simulations to see where that fire has the potential to go over the next 2 and 3 days, and then using another system to look at where it could be in a week or 2 weeks. And we're looking at that in the worst-case situation with dry winds and no rain coming in and no firefighters doing any work. So where could this fire be if everything went wrong? And then making sure our lines are consistent in our plan with that. And those redundant lines are going to be able to deal with it if something bad happens. And if the rain comes in, we've also got plans. All these little bits of work that are going in here, if we get those dry winds, all that hard work, days and days and hundreds of people doing that hard work is going to go right out the door. But we get that rain, we get those hopeful conditions we're looking for. That's going to give us a little more time to start connecting those dots and working with those steep river canyons I keep talking about. If you guys could see, or maybe you can at home, these little darker areas, a little more brown, those are steep, deep river canyons. And there's one here, and there's one here, and there's one here, and then in between it, there's a steep creek canyon here and another steep creek canyon here. So that rain's going to give us the opportunity to spend a little more time and really try and get in there and get that fire buttoned up as close to that eastern edge as possible. But at the same time, never giving up the fact that bad things can happen, the weather forecast might not be accurate, and we've still got a plan in place for that situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that great explanation. So those are the questions we received this evening. We want to encourage you to continue to submit your questions. Submit them early, email them in. You can email them to 2022.mosquito@firenet.com or .gov. If you need that email, it's on our screen tonight. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your attendance and patience with us. We want to make sure we can get you back in your home as soon as we can. We'll be back here tomorrow again at 7 o'clock. We'll see you then.